Like moths to a flame, you've thrown caution to the wind for a glimpse into our world. Well, now you're in it.
Welcome to Effed Up Stories.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Effed Up Stories. I am your host, Will Pender.
And I am your co-host, Ryan Sharp.
And tonight we will be covering another user-submitted story. And again, you can notice that the audio quality is terrible right now. Again, I'm on this $30 headset. This is a tie you over episode, as we're still... For those of you that didn't catch the last podcast we did, we need a new audio interface. We have donations open, and I wanted to actually give, those of you who are aware of it, I wanted to give you guys an update of where we are with that. Right now, we have $407.58 towards our goal of $700 from your donations, and I just have to say again, from the bottom of my heart, you guys totally blew me away. I think I can speak for Ryan as well that you guys totally blew us away. When we decided to do this, we thought we might be lucky to get $50, which would help. I mean, in going and getting a new audio interface, we have to get one regardless. It's just It really helps speed up the process, and you guys totally just blew our minds. Never expected to get so much, and so we're more than halfway there. And regardless of what happens, it's going to be much easier and much quicker for us to get the audio. And even if we don't reach our goal of $700,
we're still going to get it.
Yeah. We're still going to get it, and it's going to make the process that much faster. I'm hoping by the very latest would be the end of next month, and that all depends on how the donations go. If they keep up, who knows? Maybe we could even get it sooner. So I want to thank you guys for that, but I also want to let you know that Ryan and I we want to give something back for this. I mean, we decided that early on, but and I have mentioned it to the comments, but I know everybody doesn't read that. Everybody doesn't check the main site. On the main site, right on the main page, I do have a progress report of how the donation's doing, so you can follow it. And we're going to be doing these, digital goodie packs to give back to you guys who donate. And every time you donate, which is through PayPal, I get an email that says who it came from. I get their email, I get their amount, and so I've been keeping you all on a list, and your emails, your name, and what you donated. And what I'm doing, and what I've been doing while we're trying to get the money together, is I'm putting together these different packages. And when they're done, once we get our audio interface, I'm going to be emailing you all, a link to your package. And it depends, it's going to depend on how much you donated, the tiers that we have. I was trying to think of those humble bundle game bundles that you can buy, where if you donate so much, you get this, and so much more, you get this. And this is very loose, but I just want to give you guys an idea. Anybody who's donated anything is going to get something. What I have in my mind right now is that everybody who donated anything at all is going to get those 4 paid episodes that are on YouTube. Beyond that, like $10 will give you the whole last season, maybe. $20 or more will give you every season we ever did, and some other digital stuff. And beyond that, I'm going to pick 3 people who had the biggest amounts donated, and those people I'm going to email you. Hopefully you answer your email is the one that you use for PayPal, and we're gonna offer you a custom podcast. Basically, any topic you ever wanted us to do, you can tell us what you want to do it on, and we'll do our best to do the best podcast we can on your dream topic. And we'll let you put in basically a paragraph blurb of whatever you want. Maybe you want to, I don't know, you got a cousin who really likes UFOs, and you want to say, you dedicate this episode to your cousin so and so who likes this UFO. Way to go, buddy, or whatever. Or maybe someone's birthday's coming up, and you can leave a special message, and we'll read it in that podcast. And of course, the podcast will be dedicated to you for donating to us. So that's the loose plan right now. But I just wanted to make you guys aware that we're very grateful and hope to give back in the ways that we can. And with that having been said, we're going to jump into this episode, which is this story actually came in from a guy named Jonny Camilleri. And if I know I didn't say that right, but you know who you are, and if you want to read the main story and read the name and figure out the pronunciation, the main story is called "The Idle Imp" on the official website. And by the way, if you have your own effed up story and you'd like to get it on the website and into a podcast, you can submit that to us at the official site, which is effedupstories.com. That's EFFEDUPSTORIES.com. And now into Jonny's story. So it's called "The Idle Imp." And essentially, you've all heard the word imp. Usually it refers to someone who's being mischievous, doing little practical jokes or whatnot. But it also relates to a demon called an imp. And that's precisely where Jonny's story goes. So let's jump into it here. Just like many of our guests or people who've submitted stories, Jonny's had many strange experiences. For him, they mostly took place at his parents' house, right starting from when he was a young lad. But this story was his absolute worst. And this happened when he was around the age of 10. And still, he always lived in this house, I guess, as a child, but he moved into another bedroom. And he said at night, every now and then, he would feel the bed shake for about 10 minutes. And this would come and go. And he would also notice that, one time that one of the walls in the room were shaking, and it was shaking for about a half an hour. And he said, this wall was made of wood. And this stuff kind of got to him and freaked him out. I think it would freak out an adult, much less a child. But so he would notice lots of different things shaking in his room. And he said when he turned 23, he left. But unfortunately, like happens to so many of us, once he 8 years later, he ended up having these serious health problems. And what happens when you get in those situations? Or perhaps it's financial, whatever. Sometimes you end up back at your parents' house for one reason or another, and that's, in his case, it was serious health problems. So he ended up back in the same bedroom that he was in as a kid. And he said, like before, every now and then he would feel the bed shaking. But then, in July of 2012, things got much worse. He said the bed would violently shake, and it would go on for 5+ hours every night, usually starting at around 2 a.m. And he said this happened every night apart from, the scatter here and there where he would get some peace. But, this was a very regular occurrence for him. He said one time he saw this, he had a steel headboard, and he saw that shake violently for 30 seconds. So he watched that happen. And he also began to feel something walk around on his bed. And he said whatever it was invisible, but he could feel these tiny feet. And he also felt whatever this thing was lie down beside him a couple times. And he figured, based on, what he could feel through the blankets, that this thing was about 2 feet tall. And he said several times he also felt something punch him in the face. So he would, first you might be thinking it's like a cat. That's what it reminds me of. It's like when my cat jumps up onto bed, but my cat doesn't punch me in the face. So, I'm pretty good there. But he said he would also get these stinging sensations all over his body. And a few times he felt what he feels were ice cold claws scrape his legs. Now, oddly enough, when he would turn the lights on sometimes, this all would stop. But as soon as the lights went back off, it would all resume. And but on the other hand, sometimes he would turn the light on and it wouldn't stop anything. It would just continue. So this was really bothering Jonny. And, he could only seem to sleep when it turned on and this would stop. And he said a couple of times, he went to stay at his sister's, but whatever this thing was followed him there and did the exact same things in her house. Like, for example, one night he was there and he said the wooden floor was very violently vibrating. And at his parents' house, his mother even claimed that her bed was shaking one night. His brother also claimed that it was happening to him several nights. So, it wasn't just Jonny, it was his family. And at some point, Jonny became determined that he wanted this to stop. So he bought this crystal, which he said is called a capture stone. And basically, it's supposed to capture spirits and send them back to their place of origin. And in order to do this, you'd take the crystal and you'd have to recite these magical words to activate it. Once it was activated, you could place it next to your bed or on the floor, and it was supposed to capture the spirit. So when Jonny did this, he said, amazingly, the first night of doing this, he had no activity. Nothing for 4 months. But then all of a sudden, of course, it came back and it all started again. So Jonny began to contact psychics and entity removers, and he spoke to this one psychic, and she said that what it was that it was an imp, and the imp wanted Jonny's soul. He said these 2 entity removers tried to remotely get rid of it but failed, and he said that he paid some money to a few people, which brought no results. So eventually he met this Christian spiritualist minister, and he came to bless and clear the house, but that whole ritual just made this imp even madder, and it just got worse. So he said he tried Christian spiritual warfare prayers and invoking angels and Jesus, but nothing changed. He even smudged the room. But for whatever reason, he said after 20 months, it began to die down and eventually stopped. But he's still currently living in fear that it's going to come back. So that's Jonny's story. I have some thoughts about it, but Ryan, I'll open up the floor to you first.
Well, I mean, that's a that's a pretty intense experience, something like that, so violent, lasted for 20 months, and I always find it funny, you hear so many stories about, spirits and demons and right to UFOs, and people invoke the name of Jesus and get priests and stuff like that, and you hear so often of it clearing up, immediately, kind of a thing. But here's if we're going to take Jonny at his word, and we are, for the purposes of this podcast, here we have an example of something that didn't seem at all bothered by all kinds of smudging, the burning of herbs and spreading the smoke in the air, warfare, spiritual warfare prayers, and Christian ministers. Sometimes these things don't help. In the case of things like the jinn, The jinn don't respond to any of those things, right?
Well, the thing that it put me in mind of, like he said that it made it matter, and the thing that put me in mind of is just like when you see your traditional exorcisms, and they're screaming biblical verses and commanding it out in the name of Jesus, and it makes them matter, right? I do think it has an effect, but just to go in and say a couple, it's never that easy. Not even in like these these cases where we see, like, a lot of people think that exorcisms are a one-time thing. You have this thing happen, and then you have an exorcism, and then you're clear. But the real stories paint a very different picture, in where people go through sometimes years of regular exorcisms, right? It's like a process that takes place over a long time. I do think it has, like using Jesus' name and stuff like that has an effect, but I don't think, this idea that saying it once, or having this one time where you just say the stuff and it's gone, right? Like, maybe it does work for some people. Maybe it depends on the demon you're dealing with. Maybe it depends on a whole multitude of things. But definitely, it seems that there are stories where it takes more than just saying these things a couple times. And I mean, in some lights, I mean, he said like a Christian spiritualist minister came and blessed the house. Now, Ryan, if it were you or me, and let's say that we had something like that, we didn't know what we know. Like, truthfully, if my house was possessed, I wouldn't know what to do. I'd probably be on the internet looking for someone who knew more about it. But let's just say it happened to you or I, and say we were the type of people who would go to like a local church, especially when you lived home, Ryan. Like home. And would you have any faith in the people here to be able to deal with something like that?
No, I just deal with it myself.
Right, but you also know that the people, the priests. I mean, we've met priests here. We've gone to the churches here. We've had our experience. I mean, they know so far, it seems, as what they deal with in church. They don't have any like hands-on experience with, like, as
No,
far
I
as
actually,
we know.
I actually tried talking to a couple of priests about, the more, not the sermon stuff, but the actual spiritual warfare stuff.
And what did you get from that?
Oh, like there was two different ones, and for years my parents dragged me to church, and I bumped into the guy one time, and years later, after I'd stopped going, and I started kind of drilling him a little bit, and just absolutely would not even make a comment on the subject. And another priest that I met, I again applied the same questions. What would you do with a haunting? What would you do with a demon possession? What do you know about the exorcism? And they just they would have no part of it whatsoever.
Not only
But I take a little bit of a, like, when it comes to invoking the name of a deity in specific rituals. See, I take a bit of a different angle on it, right? I don't necessarily believe in magic words as much as it's like, a ritual, and the ritual phrases and the quote unquote magic words or words of power that are used in rituals. They're not so much meant to use some ephemeral energy source called magic to alter things. In my opinion, how I feel it works is it's a matter of your own personal force of will that you cultivate through just natural ability and whatever kind of mind focusing procedures you follow, whether it be meditation or performing rituals, that performing a ritual just kind of like narrows and focuses your mind, right, and focuses your intention and your personal will. And
And
I think
perhaps your
that
belief.
well, and that's part of it. Like your belief in Jesus is what fuels your own higher levels of focus for your own. Like it's coming from you personally. Now you might use the names of gods and saints and deities to kind of bolster yourself and focus your will, and use a ritual to kind of get you into the headspace so that you're able to project your own will on the universe. And if that's, if we're talking about a spiritual entity, I think it's if we're going to go so far as to say there was a spiritual entity, a demon-like creature, who's tormenting this young man and this family, then I think that, if we're going to go that far, I don't see how it'd be unthinkable that, your own individual force of will, your own mind power, can affect that being in its kind of reality, or it's an ephemeral being, maybe is a being of thought. It can make itself seen and unseen because it's not physical, and if it's existing in a non-physical reality and a non-physical existence, then maybe these non-physical things that we call our force of will are able to force them out. So in the case of a priest, the ones who really take exorcism seriously, they really, really believe in God. Like there's no question in their mind that there is good and evil, and that God is good and can help fight the evil. But just like he doesn't, if he's up there, he doesn't interfere in our day-to-day lives. He doesn't stop cars and bombs and bullets with his magic powers. So perhaps he doesn't lend any spiritual assistance either. And it's a matter of you bolstering your own force, your own personal soul power or mind power, however you want to look at it. And if you need a cross and a little purple necktie thing and a black robes and a Bible and the name of Jesus and saint this and angel that, then that's what you need. That's what you use. Those are the weapons in your personal repertoire, right? Just the same as somebody from India might use any number of different god names, Kali or whatever.
Or a quarterback who won't wash his underwear because he believes flies are lucky. Right? But
It's all a matter of your own I mean, we've all had those experiences where you're thinking of somebody, right, and then all of a sudden the phone rings and it's them. And I mean, it happens so many times throughout the course of your life and to so many people that there does seem to be some kind of non-physical link between us individually. So maybe those kinds of examples show that there is an invisible world where we have an access to. Well, you might call the world of the mind or the spirit.
There's a couple of things that I think of within regards to all of this. One is that miracles, right? I mean, they've done studies now where when you get a bunch of people together and they pray and they're all focused on a certain outcome,
regardless of religion,
regardless of all these different.
It even worked with a group of atheists. This particular experiment.
As long as there's a group of people all focused on a specific outcome, oftentimes a miracle will happen where this outcome actually happens. Right? Now, the other thing...
It makes it more statistically likely for the event to occur.
Yes. So,
They actually did. I don't know if you heard of this one. They did that experiment, but it was a double-blind fertility study,
oh, I know I didn't hear that one.
and the people who were involved in the experiment weren't even aware of it, nor were the doctors who were treating them. That the experiment was it was a double that the double blind. That's what it means. So the statistical results from that were off the chart, right?
Well, you know what I'm curious about is how it we're talking about specific thought and focus and how it affects things, which we know it does on some level. But then when you bring quantum physics into it, where you have the observation effect, and that plays a huge role in the outcome of events. I mean, perhaps if you have enough people thinking on a certain thing, it does actually affect the outcome. In a scientific way, quantum physics, right?
Well, the thing with quantum physics, and that's why these kinds of things, if this is related to quantum physics, and if it is a real thing, then chances are the effects. I mean, we do know that there are certain synapses in your brain that actually trail off right down to a quantum level. So the ends of them are so small, the structures of parts of them are so small that it seems to, from what they can tell from, and I can't remember the name of the study that I read, but the ends of your synapses like literally disappear into the quantum world, so that there is an actual, like, almost a physical connection with your brain to the quantum world that is the underlying nature of the universe. Because of our five senses, like none of them are sensitive enough in our day-to-day lives to detect that world. And maybe that's that the spirit world is and I mean we're not the only ones to have theorized this, that the spirit world and the quantum world are very, they're related, or maybe they're one and the same, and that's why we see these amazing feats of invisibility and disappearing and reappearing and affecting the vibrational nature of objects. I mean, it all seems very quantum.
Yep. And another thing I want to throw out there, there's no facts behind this. This is just a theory. And it's just something that I've been thinking on more and more. I don't even know if I believe it, honestly, but it's an interesting thought that I seem to come back to. Because we have so many people that tell us that, even in alien abduction cases, you say the name of Jesus, you scare away the angels, and I started to think about how, all these different entities. You got aliens, you got demons. Even people who are holding people hostage, or people in an area with a gun, somehow the proposed or possible victim starts praying and sends away the threat. And then I thought about it a little bit, and at least in terms of demons and aliens and stuff like that, it reminds me of the idea, like when you're a child and somebody's up to no good, something they're not supposed to be doing. You run home and tell your parents, or somebody does something like that, and in doing so, it stops the event from happening or halts it because they know they're not supposed to be doing it. You shine a light on it. And then when I think of Earth itself, you think of the galaxy, the universe, and how many planets and how just vast it is, and we're on this tiny little speck called Earth, where mankind, as far as we know, are the intelligent species. We're supposedly made in the image of God, and we have different animals and plants, and we all kind of work in harmony together. One source is food for another. Like there's this big cycle and chain of events here. But at the top of it is humans. And we're supposed to be in the image of God. And it almost seems like Earth itself is a bubble for mankind. It's like a petri dish. This is the study project of mankind on this little planet. And it's almost like there's this unwritten universal rule. Whether you want to say that's between God and the devil or other entities, aliens, because it's only us that's ever mentioned in the Bible that's made in the image of God. And it almost seems as if, these other entities, whether it be aliens or demons, there's like this unwritten rule that they're not allowed to interfere with us. It's this is God's experiment. This is his little petri dish. And every time one comes in here, they do try to interfere. They do try to pick and prod. But as soon as you call out to God or you call on Jesus, and putting that spotlight there, it scares them away, probably because they're not supposed to be here, and because they will have repercussions or they will be punished for digging into God's petri dish. It's almost like you're telling on them. You're shining the spotlight on this thing. And the more and more I think about it, and I think about how, the world really bends to us and what we do, and they say free will, and we're making all these decisions and the things we do. It's almost like there's one big test. Life is a big test for humans. Like what would we become? What's our potential? And nothing's supposed to interfere. Like the whole test is maybe testing us for something better. Are we a workable species meant to go on to better things? It's almost like if we were scientists in a lab somewhere and we put together our own artificial intelligence. Well, we wouldn't just unleash it onto the world, I would hope. We would have this little bubble somewhere, this facility where
there's actually a whole mythology based on this, and this goes into a whole other topic that we're not going to get into now, but it's the Aeons and the Archons, and supposedly this is information that comes to us from, I believe, not 100%, but I believe it's the Zoroastrians, and they're pre-Christianity, pre-Judaism, was the biggest religion at that time. And in these like ancient sealed jars, they busted them open and found these documents detailing this whole the creation of Earth and the universe, and us being here is this big experiment being performed by these beings, or this particular being is one of many, called an Aeon, and they created Earth like for that purpose, for mankind, and it's just a like a big experiment that's being played out, and that the Archons are this accident that occurred. The beings were created by accident, and they're this big hindrance in the whole experiment, is this big glitch in the whole thing, and they're doing their damnedest to they think they're gods, and that they control everything, and that that they're going to reign over mankind. That's the gist of it, but it does, it echoes a lot of what you're, I mean, I don't know, like I would love for science to have all the answers, and I follow, the scientific understanding of the creation of the universe and our place in it. But as brilliant as some of their theories and leaps of intellectualism, as elegant and as brilliant as some of them are, they leave so many questions left to be answered, and I think that's where a lot of people in modern day turn to spiritualism and look at the old mystic answers, because there seems to be a drawing together of these two separate worlds, back to quantum physics and its relation to metaphysics. There's quite a few people that believe that there are links, and
Well, the thing is, science really is in its infancy, right? I mean,
oh,
as much
well,
as
we've
we
only been at
know,
it for like really, we've only been really applying the scientific principles and philosophies for like a couple of centuries,
right?
really.
And I mean, all these things still exist. I mean, and predate humankind, right? So for science to catch up and be able to prove it, I mean, it's going to take a long time. I mean, when you think about what it means to prove something and what would actually hold up as proof, and you think about how some non-tangible some of these things are. I mean, just look at the quantum physics, the observation effect. I mean, how the hell do you prove something like that? I mean, I know that they have, but I mean, just the very idea is so obtuse. It's so.
Well, and the whole observation experiment actually is if you go and really look into it, a lot of people misrepresent what the double slit experiment tells us about the universe. So that's for me, that's a tough one. Like I said, like I like to keep current with all the different bits of science that I can, and now there's quite a few articles out there if you look around, kind of putting a lot of that, a lot of the myths about the observational effect and the double slit experiment. That's where the where the theory came from. That's the experiment that supposedly proves that us observing, but regardless, I think these two worlds, these two unseen worlds with these amazing weird things that happen in them, both in science and mysticism, it in my opinion, it leads a lot of credence to the possible existence of these bizarre entities that we've been living with since the beginning of time.
And perhaps that we're purposely put in a bubble because we're not supposed to interfere with them. Like again, this is a specific experiment that is meant for us, and nothing is supposed to interfere. I mean, we're the same way when we do our experiments, right? I mean, if we're doing genetically modified animals or whatever, it's very controlled. I mean, you don't just release them into the wild. Everybody doesn't know, but I mean, half the stuff that we cover is pretty taboo and niche. I mean, not well known because they don't want it known, right? I mean, it's controlled. So, much in that same light, I mean, if you could think as our creator, we're supposedly in the same image, and what would we do? Well, we would keep whatever we were working on under wraps. We would keep it controlled. We wouldn't have it interact with anything that we didn't want it to. We would keep it.
Well, you don't want cross-contamination across
exactly.
Petri dishes, right?
Exactly. So, I mean, it kind of makes sense. I mean, don't you find it strange and awfully convenient that we're on this tiny planet I mean, look how big the universe is. We're a speck, right?
Oh, yeah.
And there's all this life here. But, mankind, I mean, obviously this place is meant mostly for us. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've seen some really smart animals. Some that blew me away. I actually just saw a video of an elephant paint a picture of an elephant picking these heart-shaped balloons out of trees. Like, so was art too, and he even wrote his name. I mean, that just blew my mind. So I mean, animals are really smart too. But I mean, is there really any question that humans are the dominant force on the earth, for better or worse?
Oh, right? We are definitely the we're the prime mover on the surface of this planet for sure.
Right. So I mean that's the test, and so far I think we're failing because we're blowing each other up, and we're
Well, mankind, like I do have hope for the future. As negative as I can be about this stuff sometimes, I think that though we continue to kill one another, we've still managed to scrape forward while doing so. Like there's enough forward momentum that I think that while the tail end of humanity keeps squabbling amongst one another, that the best and brightest of us will continue to scrape our way forward, and I don't see that slowing down.
I mean, really, what we're hoping is that we're going to get an invite to like Vault 101, or writes that after all this nuclear warfare is over, we can go up and build pipe rifles and we can. Oh, I've been playing a lot of Fallout 4.
Yeah, yeah, I can see where your analogies are coming from.
But it could happen.
It could happen, and I think that with stories like these, it really helps to kind of focus the mind a little bit and say, you know what, if this happened to this guy over the course of 20 months, this constant interaction with an unseen non-human intelligence, then it starts to put things into perspective a little bit. If you could prove that there was a whole world of other entities who maybe didn't have any form or whatever the case was, it would be the same thing as discovering alien life on another planet. It would be that magnitude of a discovery. And I always like to keep my mind open, and I think that if we ever did somehow create a technology or a method or a technique or some way to prove the existence of these beings or fairies or anything like that, it would be a discovery on par with a non-human intelligent biological entity, a first contact scenario, because that's exactly what it would be. We've been asking since the beginning of time, what's the meaning of life? Is there anybody else out there like us? That's not us. That's been a persistent goal of mankind, a quest of mankind, to find someone who's not us, but they're like us.
Yeah, well, it's kind of
in
scary.
either way.
It's scary to think, I forget the quote, but it's something like, I don't know what's scarier, that there is other life out there, or that we are the only life.
Or
right?
that we're alone in the universe. What thought is scarier?
Yeah, and by the way, there is a bigger mystery, actually, with Jonny's story than anything. We actually haven't touched on it, but it raises more questions than answers. So, okay, he was 23 when he moved back home. And, sorry. He left his house when he was 23, and he moved back 8 years later, and that's when the 20 months of craziness happened.
Yeah.
But prior to that, starting from when he was around the age of 10, he experienced this throughout his childhood. Yeah. I guess it seems up to the age of 23. So, why would he experience it in that house from like 10 to 23, move away for 8 years, and he's fine, nothing happens, and then he comes back, same shit kicks up again, only worse, but only for 20 months. I mean, it's really weird. It's hard to knock it down or say for certain what actually happened or what scared it away. I mean, obviously, whatever it was seemed to have stayed in the house, right? I mean, it had to have been in the house. I mean, his brother saw it, his sister saw it. So there's something in the house.
Some connection. And that just goes back to, this is one of those mysteries that captivates us so much, because we just don't know the rules, right? When it comes to the paranormal, it doesn't appear that there's any rules. Like for us, there's rules. Like you can't go through walls, You can't jump 30 feet in the air. You can't fly. You can't, make your eyes glow, and you can't turn invisible. Like, we have fucking rules for all the paranormal stuff out there. It's like the rule book goes out the window. And I think that's what the most intriguing aspect of it is.
Oh, hell yeah.
We hear so many times in like all these old stories, right? Like in fairyland, time moves differently. A day is a year, or whatever. And the whole missing time with UFOs. There's a connection between the paranormal and time. And again, it seems to be one of these rules that these non-normal entities appear to be able to mess with. And if this thing is getting its jollies off over the course of like 20 years on picking on this kid in this one particular house, like, how does that make any sense? But that's the bizarreness and the randomness of the paranormal.
Yeah, and it sounded like, well, he was told that it was an imp. It sounds like an imp. Maybe they have their own lives that, a lot of times when we think of demons and stuff like that, we think of, these eternal creatures that live forever. But perhaps, this imp had, I don't know, so many years, 10, 20 years or whatever, to achieve his goal. And if he didn't achieve it, that's it. That was your chance. You're gone. Right? And he was given his chance. He didn't pass, and he became Creeper in Morrowind, and sold or gave me lots of gold. So who knows what the rules are to these things, but there you have it. I mean, that's the most interesting thing about the paranormal, is that it doesn't make sense. It's a mystery. It makes you think. And it gives us a little insight into the possibilities beyond our bubble. Because let's face it, the bubble gets pretty damn boring. So, with that said, I hope you guys all enjoyed that. And, again, sorry for the audio quality. We're working on it. Thank you so much for everyone who donated and continue to donate, which you can do on the official site, as well as submit your effed up stories, which is site is effedupstories.com. That's EFFEDUPSTORIES.com. You can follow the progress of the donations. I update it daily, and hopefully we'll be back, at least by the end of next month. The speed at which we can do this really depends on the donations, but it's already going to be more than double as fast as it would have been, and we can't thank you guys enough. I feel like I had something else to add too. Oh yes, since we probably won't have another show before Christmas, Merry Christmas in advance. I hope you get all your gifts and you're all happy and stuff.
And you have a kick-ass New Year.
You have a kick-ass New Year. Actually, we hope to help make your New Year kick-ass. We should be on the go again regularly. I'm thinking we will. I mean, even if we got to scrape up, we're a good ways there now. So hopefully, we'll be able to figure something out if we're not exactly at our goal. I mean, somewhat it depends on how this goes, but on the other hand, we're already helped so much. I think we're a good part of the way there.
Yeah.
So anyway, with that said, guys, thanks for listening, and we hope to catch you next time.
Thanks, everyone. Good